Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Lindsey Scrase. I lead our global SMB or online sales team for G Suite. And I'm really excited to welcome you to YouTube Live for this Google Cloud Fireside Chat. Thank you for bearing with us and being patient. We're excited to get started and we'll dive in. So why are we here? We're here to, first of all, connect with you, to get, for you, the opportunity to know some of our leaders in clouds. We have Bruce here today, which I'll get to share some of the exciting things that are happening in Google Cloud, and then really most importantly to be able to hopefully answer some of the questions you have about Google Cloud and what we're doing. So today we're lucky to have Bruce Bordelon here with us. Hi everyone. Bruce is a technical solutions director within Google Cloud. So he runs a team of customer engineers, and they help our customers through their entire journey to the cloud, starting with the technical evaluation, the evaluation of solutions, just deciding what of our cloud solutions is best for them, and then onboarding into Google Cloud. Bruce has been with Google for 11 years and counting, so he's really seen Google evolve over the years as well as Google Cloud. And prior to this, he spent time at Verity, FileNet, and General Dynamics. Bruce hails from the great state of Texas, and one of his hobbies is smoking brisket. So if we have time, we can hear from him some of his techniques or recipes. But two quick housekeeping things first. You'll notice in the description there's an RSVP link. So please, if you have not yet filled this out, do so that we can keep in touch with you after this. And then secondly, as a reminder, we'll have folks monitoring the chat on the video. So please feel free to ask your questions throughout, and then we'll address those during the Q&A session at the end. But just to start with you, Bruce. So cloud is hot right now. Cloud can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But can you talk about why is it so exciting right now at this moment?
Sure.
Cloud?
Yep. So I know I look incredibly young, but I've been in the industry for a while, and so opportunities like this don't come along very often. It's about generally one per generation. Where you see these major movements in enterprise computing. So, mainframes, cloud to client server, the internet revolution, mobile, et cetera. And so you're seeing what's probably the biggest mass migration of IT in the history of mankind, or the history of IT. And so that's exciting to see what we can do to help really transform businesses as they discover not only how can they offload a lot of that compute infrastructure to the cloud, but think about how to do things in different ways. If I could do two at the same time, there's actually, I think, a second revolution that's taking place almost simultaneously, and that's in the area of machine learning, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, a little bit later. But really democratizing the accessibility of machine learning to businesses to use to solve their problems in ways that perhaps they haven't even thought of before. So the tools are really starting to get accessible to more and more users, as opposed to being in the realm of like data scientists, is where it typically has been in the past.
Yeah, and the machine learning front, I think it's exciting as a Googler to see the power of machine learning for us in our work, and that then we can bring it to our customers as well. So many of you know we had a large conference called Next a couple of weeks ago here in San Francisco with a really great turnout and a lot of really exciting announcements on the product side. So Bruce, kind of being at Next and kind of understanding the wealth of announcements and new releases we have, what for you are the two most exciting things from Next?
So I think the one that got the most oohs and ahs, and I agree with it, was probably the announcement of the video machine learning-based API. The ability to essentially stream a video through a machine learning algorithm that's pre-built to look for entities within the video itself and tag it along the way. It has a lot of possibilities in a lot of different industries. There's a massive video archive out there for a lot of companies that I think could really leverage this sort of technology to their benefit. The second one is probably Cloud Spanner, which was announced just a little bit before Next. But essentially the ability to scale horizontally SQL-based databases with consistency globally is just something that just has never been able to, a company has never been able to accomplish before. And so for us to do that as a managed service, I think is a really exciting capability that we brought to the market. And if I can cheat and add a third one.
Yeah.
I would say that it's may not be the headline grabber per se, but the Jamboard to me was one of the most interesting things for anybody who uses whiteboards on a regular basis in a team setting. The ability to kind of share the screen at the same time with others in a very seamless way, either within a conference room or across Hangouts or even around the globe simultaneously was really interesting and fun for me.
It's phenomenal. Hope you guys get to see Jamboard soon. On the just deep diving on the first one on the machine learning video API, what's like a use case that a company might use this for? I mean, previously this would take hours and hours. Now it's instantaneous.
Well, there's a few things. So one is you could do the speech to text just to kind of get a transcription of what's going on, the conversations that are happening on the video. But if I'm, perhaps work for National Geographic or Discovery Channel or places like that where you have massive video archives, essentially you're looking for, let's say, archive footage of a cheetah or elephants or anything that is identifiable as an entity. To be able to really rapidly scroll directly to where those things are in a video saves hours and hours of time, as opposed to having somebody really literally watch that video through and tagging them manually.
Incredible. So Google's been very successful in bringing products to billions of consumers. How is Google going to be successful in the enterprise game?
That's a great question. I would say that the value add that we're really bringing in my mind is the no lock-in proposal, right? So historically, enterprises have addressed their vendor relationships with a little bit of animosity because in many cases a vendor is focused on making sure that they're locking them into what their platform has to offer and kind of putting barriers around migration or moving in or out of those platforms. The Google technology really centers around, is based around a lot of open source technology. So you find a lot of the services that we're offering have open source equivalents. And what that means to an enterprise is essentially you can run at whatever makes sense to you. I can run on-premise using the same sort of technology as Google offers. I can run a hybrid approach, so I have some on-premise and some in the cloud. Or I can do a multi-cloud approach, so I can run essentially the same technology on multiple clouds, so I get the benefit of really cost benefits. I can understand how to essentially financially make decisions around how I want to distribute my compute. So that's one key aspect of it. The other one is the way that we expose a lot of our services is essentially through the idea of serverless computing or managed services. So really abstracting even further away from setting up servers and CPUs and understanding how many cores I have to apply, et cetera. Using a managed service takes all that out of the picture and really lets the customer focus on what's the functionality I can bring to the situation to solve problems.
Absolutely. So maybe a little bit more about you and your team. What are you guys working on?
Well, so our team is called Customer Engineering. Most of the industry would typically call that a sales engineering or solutions engineering team. Our reason for rationale for calling it customer engineers is obviously we want to focus on customers, not fixing customers. We want to engineer the customers, but we want to focus on customer problems. So essentially we're their concierge on the technical front. We want to make sure that they not only understand fully how all the products work and can be used to address their business issues, but we also escort them through a full technical evaluation of the product. So we'll run things like technical workshops to help them understand how to apply big data technology to situations, or perhaps even we do have workshops centered around machine learning. So if customers want to get a really good understanding of how not only pre-built trained models can work to solve problems for them, we can also bring to bear some more of that data science magic, pixie dust that comes from machine learning to help them really understand how they could apply that as well. So. Essentially, like I said, being the concierge for them through the Google experience and helping them get ramped up into production.
Yeah, it's such an interesting part of our broader team because it's a team that really deeply understands the technology and the products, but gets to interact with the customers every day and kind of bridge those two. So in terms of the customer engineering team, what are you looking for when you hire? You're doing a lot of hiring, I think, right now.
Yeah, hiring is one of the most fun things to do at Google. It never stops, right? So there's a few things I would say we look for. Bringing something to the table, so having some role-related experience or knowledge around the space that we're in is pretty important. But I would say also there's a character issue or character attribute that we look for as well. It's can the person solve problems, and are they resourceful to solve those problems as well? Are they willing to go to whatever extent is necessary to contact people or do the research or contact customers or partners and bridge across to other areas to get the answers to the tough problems to help them overcome whatever challenges are there. So a lot of it is just a resolve really to solve problems, and the ability and the knowledge and the cognitive ability really to do that.
Absolutely, because the problems are probably changing every week, if not every day.
Yes, definitely.
So in terms of people that are interested in roles in cloud within Google, what advice would you give them?
I would say if you're not already looking or getting experience with cloud-oriented technologies, or especially in the open source community, so if you're not tinkering around with something that has to do with Hadoop or things that are on the cutting edge around machine learning like TensorFlow, I would say start to explore that so you get a good foundational understanding of what's going on. What advice would I give them? Yeah, just apply, honestly. We're constantly looking for great people. There are lots of opportunities not only in the customer engineering team, but sales, marketing, product, etc. So, but know something about what we do, I think is pretty critical. So don't just come and expect us to look at you as a candidate. You need to come and explore us as well and bring something that you understand about what we're doing.
Great advice. And for those that are interested, we will cover that toward the end. What would you think, generally speaking, makes someone that comes onto Google Cloud successful in their role, or what pitfalls should people avoid to not be unsuccessful?
Don't be a wallflower. I mean, you've been at Google for a long time too. It's sitting in a cube and expecting to be accomplished in what you're doing without interacting with others it's folly. That won't work. So be outgoing, be vivacious, just be energized and engage with other people cross-functionally, especially is a key element of it. And it doesn't have to be just senior level people cross-functionally engaging. It's any individual contributor should take it upon themselves to get to know people in the product team, the eng team, and the marketing team, et cetera. Because great ideas honestly come from everywhere at Google. I think we know that, and they often come from the collaboration of those who aren't similar or in a similar role. So being successful really takes a lot of that cross-functional engagement.
Absolutely, and the tenacity to just get things done.
Yes.
All of that. So we have, I think, some audience questions. We'll just look to see. Give us 1 second here. So a live question from Pablo. Can video machine learning search for topics in audio videos? So for example, if I have a large archive of speaking videos, can I automatically catalog my archives by the topics spoken about in the video? Can this be done in other languages?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, so there's probably a combination of machine learning services that you'd want to use in that particular case. So the video API for understanding of the audio and then also identifying of entities. We do also have a translation API. I'll have to admit that I don't know if the video API does multiple languages for audio, so you might have to extract audio and then use translation, speech to text rather, with translation, because the speech to text will do the language for you. If you need to translate to another language, obviously you can do that as well.
Okay. And I'm going to just interject a couple of questions throughout the audience questions. So, Bruce, you've been at Google 11 years. You've probably been to many Google offices. How many have you been to, if you know? And then what is your favorite and why?
Well, there's actually an internal tool that you can look up, see how many offices. You get a badge for how many offices you've been to. I want to say I've been to around 20 to 25 of our offices.
Okay.
One of my favorites is still the Zurich office. It has some very interesting tie-ins to local culture, which I think make it super interesting. Plus, there's also the fire pole, which you can slide down and from floor to floor, and then there's the slide that you can come down into the cafe area, which I understand they do for Noogler Day when they're announcing Nooglers. I believe they actually will announce the name and have them come down with their propeller hat, and then they can have. It's usually I think around happy hour.
Convenient. Great. So we have another question from Bala. So Lindsey, I have a question for you. Is Google Cloud running with third-party support or purely a Google product? We could probably tag team this. On the G Suite side, I guess the Google G Suite we kind of have as a platform, and we can fully support that as a product and a suite of applications through Google. But what we've done is, been given the ability for lots of other businesses to build on top of Google. whether it's a CRM or email marketing solution, and so that more and more product integrations and APIs to allow businesses to tie in to Google so that it's an entire ecosystem. Anything you would add to that? I don't know exactly what the question.
So we're collaborating with third-party support or purely a Google product. Yeah, so when we obviously have our own Google support organization for the various products, there are situations where frontline support might be handled by a third party as well that we certify. So I'm not sure if that's hopefully that's addressing the question.
Yeah, and we provide pretty comprehensive support for our customers directly, and then also through our partner ecosystem. So another live question from Anuj. How do you best determine where to spend your time? A good question. Customer profile, segment, technology, embedded, etc.
That's a big question for you, right? I don't have copious amounts of free time. That's an interesting question. I think it probably is, I'm going to try to answer it in two different ways, because I think it's partly as an individual, how do I figure out how to spend my time, or how would somebody on my team spend their time? And perhaps I think it's, as the question implies, talking about where does the sales team focus their efforts, whether it's industry verticals, et cetera. So from an individual perspective, it's going to vary obviously based upon the role of or the level of the individual. On my team anyway, a customer engineer on the front lines is going to hopefully spend the majority of their time directly with customers. I'm hopeful it's on the 60% plus side of things. And then the additional time would be spent with, there's obviously bench time that you have to take into consideration for making sure you're coming up to speed on new product, new features, et cetera. And then the cross-functional engagement that would have to go in to resolve customer issues. So you might be interacting with somebody from support, perhaps even someone from product or engineering. And then, of course, your sales counterpart, where you're just devising the strategies and tactics for making sure you're dividing and conquering a customer situation appropriately. And where I would say Google spends its time as a sales effort in the market, not necessarily on any particular vertical. There are some that make natural fits with Google currently, and you'll see that with what we call digital natives. So if you've seen announcements around Spotify, for example, it's a great example of a company who is a digital native that grew up in that space. They already operate in many respects the same way that Google does internally. So for them, it's more or less a natural conversation for them to migrate to a cloud platform, as opposed to an enterprise, traditional enterprise, who a lot of their workloads are more of a lift and shift focus, and their internal operations haven't really flipped over into the same mode as DevOps sorts of things as most digital natives would be. Did I miss a part of the question? Was that all?
I think so. And I think the only thing I would add from individual perspective for those at Google, there's always limitless possibilities of things to work on and things to do. And so it is something that people are continuously working on to figure out how to optimize time. There's never enough of it. I think that three of the things that the team members and the teams think about is how do we optimize impact? And so thinking about how to drive the most impact for the most number of customers or users as possible, as well as growth. What things are really going to provide great growth, and then scale. We're always thinking about how do we scale even more in the business, particularly on the online and SMB side. Okay, so Bruce, you've been at Google for several years. What do you appreciate most about Google? What's kept you here this long?
The food was the first thing, of course. It's not as if I haven't put on a lot of weight since I've been here.
The Google 15 is.
Yeah, so hopefully I didn't go past 20. But there is a lot of appeal, I think, for me in the early days, my first few years here, the appeal centered a lot around just the general interest in Google across the world. So in the early days of Google, it was, wow, that's the fantastic announcements day after day. Google was getting into a variety of different areas. And so waking up in the morning and going to work, it was always interesting and fun to find out, oh my gosh, what did we do overnight? If we gotten into self-driving cars and those sorts of things. So that's I think that still happens to a certain degree, and I still get excitement from that. But honestly, at this point, Having been in our enterprise-facing efforts for so long, my goal at this point is to change Google from being considered a consumer tech and ads company into a business transformational company. So I think the opportunity that we have here in cloud really represents, to me anyway, the first real true opportunity for us to make that switch and have Google thought about it in a very, very different way. And then, of course, I'll retire and ride off in the sunset and smoke my briskets.
Smoke brisket, yeah, exactly. So from Aparna, can TensorFlow help with both detection and mitigation where accuracy requirements are critical? So far, only experienced security experts are trusted.
So bot detection and mitigation. Potentially. So I think there are parts of Google that are already using machine learning for that sort of detection of what's going on, vulnerabilities and threats and what's our security stance, et cetera. There's an analysis that happens across a lot of the traffic that we see on the internet. My assumption is, of course, that we have used TensorFlow to help develop and refine those models. But yeah, again, depending upon the data source that they're looking at, is there a high quantity of data? Is there an ability to more or less structure a model out of that? Then yes, I would say TensorFlow is very applicable to that sort of space.
Great. So next question. So what is Google Cloud's policy on patch and change management? Immediate installation of patches, updates, service packs, as well as release management.
Patches, isn't it like? Do we do?
I haven't heard patches in a while.
I thought patches were all for on-premise software.
Yeah.
No, but seriously, there are essentially rolling updates all the time with all of the Google services that address not only feature improvements, functionality improvements, but also, of course, bug fixes, and then any security issues that come along the way are addressed in rapid fashion through just a rolling, constantly updates happening almost on a daily basis for almost all of the Google products. So, our policy is fix. So, the way that we do it, however, so if you think about it, let's say from a compute engine instance. So if I'm running a virtual machine in Google Compute Engine, we can actually update and patch all of the underlying infrastructure without the customer ever really realizing and having or being impacted in any way. So we support this functionality called live migration, which essentially will take a running instance of Compute Engine and move it off into another part of our infrastructure so that we can do whatever patching and updating that we need on the piece that it was running before. And again, the customer never even realizes what's going on under the cover. So it's seamless from a customer perspective.
Fantastic.
We're getting live updated questions as we go.
Yes, the power of collaboration here. From Peter, you mentioned openness and running in a multi-cloud environment. What other public clouds are compatible today with Google Cloud? And what other clouds would you like your customer to go to?
Oh, well, I don't want them to go to other clouds. Quite frankly, if a customer is using open source technology, then they can essentially use any cloud they would like to. And so we have this philosophy at Google that we don't want to have any sort of lock-in. We want our services to win the day, but at any time we fully understand that customer can make a decision to choose. And so we have to earn their business on a daily basis. So if you look at Google Search, that's, again, the philosophy that's been there since day one is any user at any given time can go use a different search engine. So you have to make it compelling and interesting for them to want to stay. I would argue that, of course, most of the open source technologies that are out there will run better on cloud, but I think it's incumbent upon a customer to really do the investigation and validate that for themselves. And then also check out other vendors for their support for that sort of open source technology as well. We embrace it fully. I think you'll find with most clouds there tends to be more of that closing in of their infrastructure or their platform, so that it makes it more difficult to move around.
And that's really a tenet of Google's philosophy across the consumer side or the business side of being able to take your data and with you, not being locked into any specific solution.
Yep.
So does Google Cloud guarantee completely and reliability data deletion?
It disappeared as we were reading. And I missed the rest of the question. I don't know if there's a way to scroll back to see it. It disappeared.
Okay.
Okay. How much acquisition? You want me to read that? Or you want Actually, I should read it. Let's counter interview, shall we?
This one's from Stefan. How much acquisition for Google Cloud do you anticipate over the coming years?
Boy, that's difficult for a person in my pay grade to say, honestly. There's a lot of consolidation that happens all the time in the tech industry, and of course, there's always new players that come into the space that perhaps either have a different twist or they fill a gap that is very pressing on the part of customers. Best way for me to say it was that we're constantly looking at those situations, and we have a team specifically tasked with evaluating who's in the market and what opportunities that represent, and where do we need to perhaps fill gaps in our technology. And there's build versus buy. Those usual arguments that you typically would see around that.
Great. So is co-location required when working at a team in Google? So can employees live in a different city, different Google office, and work on the same team?
Well, yes, you can work in multiple cities. If you look at my team, we're spread geographically across all of the Americas, North and South America. So I have folks who are in Atlanta, Chicago, D.C., New York, Toronto, Seattle. If I don't call somebody out, I'm sure somebody on my team is going to say, why didn't you say my city? Austin, Sao Paulo, Mexico City. I'm not going to go through them all. So my team specifically is spread geographically. Now they are paired with sales reps typically, and what we try to do is to make sure that those pairings are in similar locations. It just makes more sense for them to be closer to the customers that they're serving as a selling team. But yeah, we actually have, as well as a group of solutions architects who are spread globally. I won't name all of those cities either, but it's definitely possible to work in distinct locations from a team that you're working with. It just depends upon the role as well, and I'm sure you probably have teams that are spread across the globe that you could speak to as well.
Yeah, and I have folks in Gurgaon in India, in Sydney, Dublin, here in Mountain View, San Francisco, and I think that at Google, the power of our technology provides such seamless collaboration, whether it's through our G Suite products, Hangouts, and so there's always that balance of how do you allow people to work from wherever they choose and remotely, but also creating that scale and that that spark of having people work together. But I think that it definitely is possible to work remote.
It's harder to have brisket, though.
It is harder to have brisket.
Yeah, if you can have everybody in one location, you could all have brisket simultaneously.
Brisket. So from Anuj, what values and principles do you try to uphold with regard to technical customer success? Do you have a specific customer example?
Well, I'll revert a little bit back to the philosophy of openness that we espouse. My team in particular, what we are trying to gear my team around focusing on is specifically on the customer success. So if there is an aspect of a solution that requires another product that might be better than ours, I mean, certainly we should try to make sure that the customer is number one in our thinking and make sure that they are not choosing us just because we want them to, but they're choosing us because we're the right product for the situation. And it also helps with situations where you perhaps need to bring a technology partner or a services partner to help round out what you're trying to do. Do I have a specific customer example? Not off the top of my head right now, but give me a couple minutes, and maybe we come back to that one.
Great. So from Saqib, what are some of the challenges to moving to the enterprise from being consumer focused? Google Cloud.
Clearly, there's a level of understanding that you need to have as to what a true enterprise suffers through on a day-to-day basis. When you're building a consumer tech service, you're really trying to get in the skin of a consumer and understand what their motivations are. It's no different in the enterprise. You can understand typically at a hierarchical level which each level of a company, what are they trying to accomplish. So I think hiring is the right people who have an understanding is one aspect of that. We've done quite well in that area where we've hired people either directly from enterprise and industry, and then also imparted upon that how we've are training and onboarding people to really have a focus around what enterprises care about. So it's a combination of a lot of things. The challenges, I think, also just to throw in, until we have, we're doing it right now. I think in history, Google was not necessarily taken seriously as an enterprise player, primarily because we were best known for the things we brought to consumers. And I see that transformation has changed. The realization that Google can really address enterprise problems has completely changed over the last 18 to 24 months.
Absolutely. So, from Aparna, what are some of the competitive advantages of using Google Cloud Platform's machine learning tools?
Well, again, it sounds like a broken record a little bit. Openness is one of them. So you can use TensorFlow to create models, train models, and run predictions on your models in a completely different environment from our own. We have a product that another announcement from Google Next called Cloud Machine Learning that essentially allows you to take those TensorFlow models and run them at massive scale in Google's cloud. So it's this ability to kind of move in and out of the environment that you need to, and then run in a serverless, managed service sort of environment where you're not worrying necessarily about provisioning of a lot of infrastructure and hardware. And I never would want to speak badly about a competitor, but I would challenge them to have that same level of freedom to move in and out.
And just the depth of focus on machine learning across the entire company is phenomenal, and the amount of talent that we're bringing in, focusing on machine learning. It's really a machine learning first mindset within Google right now.
And if you look at, and to speak to that point, if you look at how we've started to expose that in some of our products, the G Suite product in particular has a number of new features that are driven specifically by the machine learning that was coming from underneath the covers, and those were built essentially with TensorFlow models.
Absolutely. So from Mike, other clouds spent the last 2 years moving into global enterprise IT at scale with all the integration complexity implied. Do you see GCP moving in at that scale or more selective?
I think it's going to be a combination, honestly. So the recent announcement from a partner of ours named Cloud Endure basically provides the ability for any company to migrate their VMs into GCP, I believe for free. Free is always fun.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to depend upon the companies that we engage with. We certainly want to bring them, excuse me. Wow, I almost broke YouTube and I almost broke my voice. So we certainly want to provide them that ability to do a lift and shift migration. But we also are challenging a lot of companies to think differently too. So don't just lift and shift something just so you can offload and get a little bit of financial gain. Also think differently about the problem itself, because I think you'll find when you start to dig beneath the covers of all of the other services that we have to offer, you can not only solve the problem perhaps more elegantly and with more innovation, but with even less compute requirement as well.
Great. Another one from Saqib. How do you sustain a partner space or partner ecosystem and support partners in GCP? And what are the best things that partners can do to grow their sales on top of GCP?
This is a very timely question.
Yeah.
So I just spent most of yesterday in what we call a batch hiring day, where we were looking at a number of engineers specifically to work on my team to focus on our partner ecosystem. So we have a couple of different teams. It depends on if you're meaning a technology partner, where we're working with an ISV, perhaps trying to help them understand how they can run their services on top of our platform. Or perhaps how we do tighter integration with their products, or a services partner who really adds value on top of our cloud platform and delivers solutions for customers to help them ramp up and get their production workloads running on cloud platform. So I'm hiring specifically a team of partner engineers to work in the field with those services partners to help them not only understand the platform, get educated, get trained, get certified, but also work with them with a customer specifically. So as they get through their first couple of engagements, they'll be arm in arm with those partners and working through architectures and, excuse me, helping them onboard, overcome obstacles, escalate issues, etc. So stay tuned if you are Saqib from a partner. We're bringing the army to you. But if you're interested in those sorts of roles, we're also hiring for those sorts of roles.
Yeah, and building and helping grow the partner ecosystem is such a key priority for us. And a lot of the announcements at Next, there was a day focused on our partners, also underscore that. Does Google Cloud have redundant networking of the cloud data centers?
Yeah, so the cloud platform network, actually Google's network in general, is it's unprecedented in its reach and its scale. So I forgot the exact numbers that have been estimated externally, and I can't necessarily give credence to them, but on estimate, it's 25-30% of all network traffic, the internet traffic. If I'm misstating that, somebody on my team's going to kill me. Runs through Google's network, and so we've had to not only build up the capacity, excuse me, but also the redundancy across our interconnection between data centers. And so if there is a loss of connectivity between data centers, there is a redundant path that's always available to make sure that there's no loss of access.
This is similar to a previous question, but is there a success story where your team has invested capability with the customer and then been able to deliver on a high-value business initiative for them?
Lots of them, actually. Some, unfortunately, I can't talk about. Some of the more interesting ones are not quite in the press yet. Let's see. I mean, I mentioned the one about Spotify, for example. I think the Home Depot is another really good example for those. Again, sort of a traditional enterprise. I think they're very forward-thinking in how they adopt technology internally. And yeah, we invested a lot of time with them early on. As I said before, what my team does on a day-to-day basis. We had workshops in Austin, Texas, where we brought a lot of their developers in-house. Of course, we gave them free food because that's one of the things you have to do at Google is make sure you provide food. But we brought them in for what we call a technical acceleration workshop, essentially, where we walked through on I think the first day was spent really just educating, walking through the various services that were relevant to the problems they were trying to solve. And then following up that with the next day where they actually got hands on keyboard and we're trying to figure out, all right, now we have a business problem or two or three. How do we start to prototype those alongside the Google engineers from my team? And so over a 3 or 4 day period, they were able to come away with a really clear understanding of how this would work for them. And since then, you can see in some of the press announcements where they have significant portions of their stack now running on cloud platform. So that's really where the investment up front for us is paying off not only for us, but it's also paying off for the customer.
What are our plans for CDN, Content Delivery Network space?
Oh, of course, then we have to pick a question I don't have expertise in. So the CDN, there are some CDN announcements, I think, either in alpha or beta. And so this is where I wish I had somebody on my team who could hit me up on chat and give me the background information for that. But stay tuned for more announcements. I think you'll see here over the next couple of months. With so many products and so much going on, it's hard to keep track of. I apologize for not knowing the exact answer for that one.
More to come on this one.
Sorry.
Last question, I believe we have time for, what are the key metrics you use to measure the success of the partner ecosystem?
Those are actually evolving, frankly. So, we want to understand how quickly it is that we can get partners up to speed with the platform itself. So we'll look at accreditation tiers, for example, that will measure essentially how many people they're getting certified on through the various trainings and certification programs that we have. Revenue is obviously an easy one, but it's not necessarily the only focus that we want to have. We want to see how many opportunities are partners able to run with more independently. So over time, when they're doing more and more independently without our assistance, that to me is a great metric that indicates that they're having great success on their own part. So there's a variety that are of that nature.
Yeah, and I would add that we really want our partners to be successful, and on the sales side as well. We incentivize our teams with channel neutrality just to ensure that we're helping build and grow that ecosystem from a sales perspective.
Great point.
Great. So I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you, Bruce, for all of your insights.
Thank you.
We didn't get a chance to talk about brisket, but next time. Thanks to all of you who joined from all over the world. Just a couple of reminders. Please do take the chance to RSVP, and hopefully we can stay in touch. If you're interested in learning more about Google Cloud job opportunities, we have a link in the description. You can follow to learn more. And so thank you. That's a wrap. Hopefully see you again on another YouTube live session.